In this episode, the Handyman Pros talk about spraying paint. When should you spray? What products can you spray? What type of equipment do you need? And what should you be concerned about? Welcome to the Handyman Pros radio show. Home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros radio show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation. This edition's entitled, Laying It Down, the ins and outs of spraying paint. To help me explain, I'm here with my ever-cheerful co-host and old buddy John. John, what have you been doing this week?
Well, greetings. I have been working on my on the deck out back. I shared with you some pictures of the stairs that I had replaced after 27 years.
Yeah, I think you got pretty good use out of them, right? Pretty good use.
I got good use out of them. I almost killed myself a couple of times walking down them. So I said, you know what? After all those years, I'm getting a little older. I need to redo those the right way. So that's what I did the other day, and just a couple other things I'll be doing here for a neighbor of mine. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later. But that's what's been going on this week, and it's going to continue. I've been replacing more deck boards. We might be talking about that as well. So,
show on decks coming up.
Yeah. Yep.
For me this week, I have been doing a little painting project, right? So I had a couple of doors to paint and a couple of pieces of lattice and all of that kind of fun stuff to paint, right, John? And it actually is our perfect segue into our discussion this week. Our discussion this week is about spraying paint or when do you spray and all that kind of good stuff. So what do you think about that, John? What should we start off? Let's talk about when you should spray, I think, is probably a good idea.
Yeah. So when I was doing my deck too, and around my deck I have a lot of lattice, and that is a real pain in the butt to paint or stain. If anybody out there's been doing that, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's things like that are intricate, that have a large area, that if you were to paint that with a paintbrush, it would take you forever to do that. But with spray equipment, you can knock that job out pretty quick. So it's larger areas that you want to tackle. That something like that you want to spray paint. I'm not talking about a large area like a wall that you would roll. I'm talking about things that would be like lattice, even staining railings, or railings. Painting railings.
Shutters. Shutters are a good one if you have wooden shutters and you need to paint them, because that's actually my first sprayer I ever bought for spray came because I had 27 shutters to do, and me being me, I'm like, no, I'll just paint them with a brush. And the first day I painted exactly 2, and I said, that's the end of that. I went down and bought a spray gun and finished the 25 in less than 3 hours after that. So that's the kind of thing.
Absolutely, that's a great application, because that got me thinking about I had bought some new some shutters for this house, and they're louvered shutters.
Yep.
So really, to get inside each louver and cover the area, you're painting with a brush, you'd be there for a month. So
it'd be literally
spraying it.
Yeah, literally a month.
Right.
So
right.
Is there any other reason, John? What about finish? Is it generally give you a better finish?
Absolutely. It gives you a better finish. Now, when you're doing things like lattice and you're doing, shutters and things like that, you're not outdoor stuff. You're not too concerned about that. But, this is, when you think about it, let me take it to the extreme. This is why you don't paint a car with a paintbrush or a roller. You spray it, okay? And that's how you get a really nice finish. If you're doing, interior doors or you're staining or coating your cabinets, you're always going to get a better finish spraying it. It's just the way that the paint is atomized and applied. So you're going to get a much even type of coverage than you would rolling or painting, brushing.
Yeah, of course. So, and you're right. Now, I do know people that have rolled ther cars. But anyway, that's a whole nother story.
Not since I was 15, 17, so yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking about. Or they wanted to do a really good camo pattern, and then you don't care. But it was kind of a different little thing. So are there some concerns about spraying? Are there some reasons maybe you shouldn't spray?
Well, I will tell you what stops me. What stops me is if you're going to do a small job and you're not really concerned about the finish, it's almost the opposite. It's just too much cleanup. Okay. Spray equipment will take time to set up. It'll take time to clean up. So, now the end product is great, but it has its place where you want to use it. So the other thing is that when you're applying this, you just have to be aware of the overspray because it can be messy and it can damage some things. I can go around the neighborhood and look at people's that have their homes sprayed, and I understand that, but if you're not careful, you're going to get white paint or whatever the color of your house is all over your shingles.
Your brick, your plants. You'll get over on your car.
I had that at a job site. I had the guys painting cabinets, and they were blowing the paint out of the window with a great big box fan, as they were painting, which was cool. But my car was out there.
And was that from a second story floor? Or was that
no? It got out. It got out in the wind. I'd moved my car, because I knew they were going to do it. But as it turned out, I had to rub out polish out my car to get rid of it.
Yeah. So be aware. So do be aware of that. Understand it. And so we did that whole contractor series too on hiring a contractor. You can go back into our show notes and take a look at that. But one thing too, when you're talking to a painter, if they're going to spray, make sure that they have a policy for cleaning up the overspray, because there always is overspray. It's virtually impossible to do away with unless you're in a spray booth. And we're not going to get into painting cars and things where you drive it into a spray booth and do that kind of thing. But we're just talking about around the house, like where do you spray? So that brings up another thing, John. Where should you spray? I mean, where do you, for me, I know if I'm spraying, let's say I'm going to put together, I don't know, it doesn't even matter. I'm going to take a piece of lattice and I want to spray it. And I actually want to get paint on both sides, right? If I'm putting that lattice up, I actually spray it off the house. That's how I do it. I'll lay out a piece of either a drop cloth, or sometimes I'll do it. Just depends where I am. But if I'm in a place where there's a big grass area, I might do it out over the grass. Largely just because I know that a little bit of overspray on the grass will go away. It won't kill the grass, and the next time somebody cuts the lawn, it takes the overspray off. But that's how I do it. But it's like painting in the house and things with a sprayer is a bit different. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't like to do it because if you are going to do it, and there might be some reason to do it, that go out and buy some really, go out and buy a big roll of that the painter's plastic.
Yep.
And just use painter's tape and put that up everywhere and create a little spray booth for yourself. And wear a mask. Okay.
Yes.
Don't be careful with that stuff. That's the way I do it. Now, when I've sprayed my lattice out here, I'll hang plastic on one side and I'll shoot the other side, and then I'll reverse it and take the plastic, put it on the other side, and then shoot it on the back side, because that paint will that thing will blast through. And my air conditioning units are on the other side of it and things like that. And the next thing you know, you have stain or paint or whatever it is all over your, brick or wall that's flying through there. So you just have to be aware of where it's going.
You don't want your air conditioner painted, John? Come on. What's wrong with you? What's the matter with you?
Not like that.
Not like that. Yeah, that's right. So just be aware. So because overspray it's really, it's I guess messy. It's unsightly, I think, is the better word, right? Because you can tell, and now that we're saying it, right? You'll be driving around, you'll go, oh yeah, They didn't do, they oversprayed because it's everywhere, right?
Right. They didn't prep well.
They didn't.
And
Yeah,
you really
prep
you have to be really careful. When I was painting aircraft and cars, but aircraft. I mean, that paint was I don't know if it was Alumagrip or Imiron or whatever, and I can't remember right now, but it would get everywhere. And once it got on you, it was a dark purple, bluish paint, and it just really stained everything. So we were great big like bunny suits, and I had taped up everything. So my socks, any little thing that was exposed, if you didn't tape it up, man, it was on you.
Yeah, don't wear good shoes and good clothes when you're
so it was a mess. But for the homeowner, it's it doesn't have to be that messy. Plus, you're not going to use those type of products in your home, so you're going to be using latex paints or whatever, and of course you have to thin them out. But you just have to be careful of the overspray.
Right. So you brought up a good thing. So what kind of products, what do you spray? What products do you spray? What can you spray? What do you suggest? What do you not suggest? I mean, I know, like we were just talking about latex paint, right? So you can spray latex paint. And some of this
Sure.
some of this has to do with the type of equipment that you use. So, there's John, you and I are older, so we remember in the days when spraying latex paint actually didn't even exist. That wasn't, unfortunately, gosh, that makes me feel old, but it wasn't too much long ago, I guess, or
Right.
too long ago that you actually didn't. They had no airless sprayers and things like that. That's in our world. That's relatively recent technology, or at least in our lifetime, that's technology that's come about.
Well, yeah. So you're going to spray the paints, of course. You just read the cans and do a little research on how to thin it down. So different paints, different types of thinners. Some have will thin out with water. Some will have you'll have to get some thinner. Some might be 2-part stuff that you want to get into in terms of poly paints and things or poly coatings and things like that. Stains, you're gonna that's very popular to spray a stain. A lot of people will stain their deck with a sprayer. Now, I did once, and it always seems like it's windy when I'm doing it. So here comes the overspray, and I'm not a big fan of that anymore. But people do it, and there's reasons to do it. Like we just talked about the lattice, I would recommend spraying stain on that. There's other types of top coatings, whether it's clear coats, there's lacquers, there's poly type paints that I just talked about, and then you've got the story about the elastomeric that you were struggling with putting down, and you got this as a solution.
Yeah, so I actually had a roof job. It was about 6,000 square feet, which is a lot of area, and it was a metal roof, and it wasn't that it was leaking terribly bad, but it needed to be recoated. It had rust and it had some things on it. So we scraped off all the rust. Well, we started, this is a recurring story in Larry's life. So Larry starts off with a roller, right? Because traditionally, you can roll that stuff on. Well, I ran about, I don't know, probably 4 runs on that thing, not runs, but 4 grooves, in the roof. And I said, this is taking forever. So I started doing a little research on getting a sprayer. And so this was elastomeric roof coating. Basically, it's a very, very, very heavy paint, and you spray it on and it actually puts like a rubber coating on it. This is not something that most people will do at their house because it took a very, very expensive airless paint sprayer to do it. But for me, in that particular job, it was worthwhile for me to purchase because I actually could spray that roof coating. There actually are sprayers out there like you can spray stucco and things with, and we're not really going to discuss that, but you can spray an awful lot of stuff with the right piece of equipment. So that's some of the difference. I think anything that's liquid can eventually be sprayed. And again, depending on the type of equipment. So, if it's a liquid product, it can be sprayed. Now, with that said, John, let's talk about the equipment because there's basically 2 or 3 different things. I wanted to mention one thing that I'd forgotten about, but when we talk about equipment, probably the simplest thing that you can actually apply, that you can spray paint with, not paint, I'm going to rephrase that you can spray stain with, are the pump up sprayers that you can get down at any of the big box stores, right, John? I mean, you can take stain and put them in those things and spray your deck with them. Have you ever done that?
Yeah, you can. You certainly can do that, and that is, that really is a way to apply product that way, very, very inexpensively.
Yeah, stain only though. It's stain.
Yeah,
only. It needs to be super thin. You won't get paint on with it at all. It won't work.
No, and from the from a finish, it doesn't matter. You just want to apply that. You want to get that product down. I tried. I will tell you, I tried it. I think I still have this. They have specific sprayers that you can buy.
Yeah, they have a little bigger nozzle.
I didn't like it. I didn't like it. It actually took longer than I think I talked about staining the deck before. I always like to use those pads on a pole, and I can get done real quick. Anyways.
Yep. Anyway, but that's the least expensive piece of equipment for the most part. And that's only for stains, and that's really only for your deck. But let's talk about more traditional air compressor-driven things. And we don't want to get into a real long discussion about this, but coming from the automotive side, most automotive shops have an air compressor, right? And some homeowners have air compressors, so we wanted to discuss it from the air compressor side. But John, talk a little bit about what we call traditional siphon guns.
So you've got the traditional thing that most people would think of is a cup gun. That's a siphon, what's known as a siphon gun, where you hook up the air compressor to the paint gun, and as the air goes across the top, it creates like a venturi effect, and it lowers the pressure and raises the product out of the can, underneath the cup, underneath the gun itself, and then it atomizes at the tip, and voila, here comes the spray, with air, the paint and the air. So that is the traditional siphon guns that you probably see a lot of times in automotive pictures back in the day. Today they use what's known as a gravity-fed or a high-volume, low-pressure type of spray gun. Their coverage. The coverage is much better than the old siphon guns due to they don't have to use so much air pressure going out to raise up the product and kick it out, because the product is sitting on top of the gun and it's gravity fed, so it's going in. Now you'll see that if you look online or whatever, you'll see pictures of guys using the gun with a little container on top of it. Those are kind of the new thing that auto body everybody's really using now. There's and they're good for applying both these types of equipment is good for applying anything. It's just that the newer type is more efficient with product. The other type of gun, the other type is you're still using air. And that's called a pressurized system, where it might have a pressure pot, which is basically is a pot of paint that you put on there. It's like a pressure cooker, and you put pressure on top of this thing, and it then kicks out the paint into the gun. The nice part about that is you're not carrying around on the gun itself the product, so you can get into real tight. And you can turn the gun upside down, sideways. It doesn't matter. It's still going to spray as well as anything. So it's a really nice way to go. That's really nice equipment. And then, of course, Larry, you've got some units which you'll see are airless units.
Right.
And airless units work without air, but they're like a mechanical pump, and they have the pressure on that pump is in the lines are so high that it creates that spray effect at the nozzle. Now, this is what these guys will use, where they'll actually just open up the can of paint at your house
and drop it in. Yep.
And drop the hose in there, and then kick it out that way, and like spray your siding and all kinds of things. So I've used, honestly, I've not used the high volume, low pressure paint, the new ones for automotive, but I still have my traditional DeVilbiss cup gun, and we used to use airless units actually to spray planes.
So
because when you're spraying
question.
an A300, you have to that's a lot of paint.
So, yeah, an A300 is a big airplane, by the way.
So
just so you know. But question. So on the traditional guns, my understanding is that you really can't spray latex through a traditional gun. Is that true or not?
A traditional gun, well, it's tough, okay, because it's not designed for that thickness. Okay, you'd have to thin down latex paint so much. It's those guns were more designed for the lacquers, I'll say, and the enamels.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, like in an automotive instance, okay, for application, that type of thing. So there's different size nozzles, there's different size feeds. So the latex it's a lot thicker. It's a lot thicker. Even when it's thinned down, it's still, you have to be careful when you spray it. If you want a really good texture, you just have to play with it a lot. We're not going to talk about how to spray here, but in this episode, but you just have to be, cognizant of how you're mixing it down.
Right. So, yeah. So generally, like current technology. So I bought a Wagner power painter, right? And it is what they call HVLP. It basically has a fan motor on it. I don't know what else to call it. It's not high pressure. It's very low pressure, but it looks like a hairdryer, a kind of a hopped up hairdryer, and it sprays that paint out, and it's great for latex. I mean, I got to tell you, it works really well, and you really don't even have to thin it that much. They give you a little stick. It's a really decent kit. They give you a stick, and you stick the stick in it, and it's a V-shaped stick, and it shows you where it needs to drain off of at what rate. So really pretty simple to use, and rarely do you have to mix it, really thin it out too much at all. Systems work really good. I'll tell you, one of the other things I really like about that particular system for kind of small to medium jobs with latex, like exterior jobs, is that it's really easy to clean too. That HVLP system is really easy to clean. The number of the orifices are much larger, I think, is what I want to say. So when it sprays, you've got cleaning a bigger hole is easier than a tiny little hole. Back in the day when I used to do a lot of traditional gun spraying, which has been a number of years ago now, what a pain in the neck to clean. I mean, you really spent probably more time cleaning the guns up than you did spraying, unless you were doing massive areas. If you're doing a car or something, you're doing the whole car, you'd spray the whole car. That was definitely worth it. But if you just had a smaller job to do, not a big, when I mean small, you've got, 10 or 15 square feet, which isn't really that big. It was really tough to do that unless you needed that super fine finish, and then you would do that. But that was more from the finish standpoint. But these HVLP guns, like this Wagner that I have, which is I have airless and a Wagner, but I use the Wagner for some smaller jobs, particularly like back to we're talking about hard to reach places, deck railings and things where you kind of need to get up. You need to get up and in. Really pretty easy to clean up. Still a lot longer than cleaning up a roller or a brush, but nowhere near as long as cleaning up the traditional air-powered type system. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it actually is it's decent. I mean, and it does a decent job. It does a decent job, and you can spray stains and things through it too. So one of the other things too, John, we haven't really discussed this, but folks, if you need to really spray insecticide, you can use your sprayers for insecticide as well. They will work. They actually work. Yeah. So if you got a big area and you want to put down some kind of, like if you're doing a lot of water, a lot of lawn care stuff, you can use your paint sprayers. It'll work. Trust me. Just be careful that there isn't a lot of salt in the mix. If it's a highly salty solution, if it's metal parts, it'll rust metal parts. Anyway, that's all. I digress. What else do we have just on the equipment? Should we give price ranging on it, John?
Well, yeah. So if anybody's out there that if you want to get into spraying cars, high quality finishes and things like that, then you're going to be looking at those gravity fed siphon guns, and those can those can range from $100, $150 to 500. Okay,
but you need an air compressor, right?
You're going to need an air compressor, and there's two things about air compressors. One is the pressure, and the other thing is the volume. All these little air compressors can build up a lot of pressure, but they can't keep up with the volume, and that's the difference. And you have to be cognizant of that. So, the newer guns, the high volume, the low pressure ones, you can buy those relatively inexpensively. I mean, I don't know how much you paid for yours. Some of them even have their own little compressors that come with them.
Yeah, they're going to run for on the low end about 100 and on the high end around 250. I think mine was about 145, and it actually had. It's like I said, it's not really a compressor. It's more like a blower. To me, it's a blower, but it works.
And that's a good way of putting it. It's actually a blower because it's not trying to build up a lot of pressure. Let me just make a distinction on a siphon gun. You might be starting off at around 40, 45, 50 pounds of pressure. Okay, on these low volume or these high volume low pressure units, they're only about 10 psi, but it's a lot. It's a lot of volume of air, a lot of CFM. And I see some, the high end ones like Fuji and things like that. They come with some of their own little compressors and things. They might run 400 something bucks, but that's the whole shooting match right there.
Yeah, and that's if you only would do that, and from a homeowner standpoint, only if you're really going to use it. I mean, a whole lot. I mean, you're going to if you're going to put that kind of money into it.
And I will say that let's say that you're going through a house, either renovation or big remodel, and you're putting in a lot of doors and things like that. And you want to do things yourself. Personally, I'd buy something decent and I'd be spraying my doors, because it's just easy to do and things like that. So
it's all about choices.
That's the
right?
reason. That's the reason I'd buy something high end if you're going to go through something big like that.
Well, yeah, and like for you and I, so being in the handyman business, we tend to, because for a lot of reasons, but we're going to get more than one use out of almost everything, right? So I tend to buy definitely middle of the road type products and sometimes high-end products, just depending. Like I spent a lot of money on my airless sprayer because I wanted to spray this elastomeric paint coating. Well, I also can spray latex paint and pretty much anything with it at this point. So for me, it was a business investment. It wasn't a big deal. But for a homeowner, you just have to make the call based on what your applications are and what your anticipated applications are. And you certainly, some of these on the HVLP side, some of these like the Wagner products, and there's a bunch of manufacturers out there, but they all are really they're pretty decent products. They're not bad, and they'll do a great job for you around the house. We didn't talk about airless, but airless sprayers are going to cost an entry level airless sprayer is around $300 or so, and that's entry level. Right. And then they go up from there, and I mean they can go way up. And so I don't know that I suggest airless for home use unless you're really like you just said, John. If you're going to do a big remodel or something, or you want to get you're going to own a rental property or something, then maybe you get an airless. But there's other ways to shoot that too.
Yeah, you're right. What I think what the audience is getting here is a sense of the scope of these things and where they're used and where they're needed and not needed. And the airless units, you're absolutely right. That's a production type of piece of equipment.
Right.
So if you're in the house painting business, you got to have airless units. Okay?
You're going to have an airless unit.
Okay.
Yeah. So we forgot one other piece of equipment.
For most of us.
Did you know that, John? We forgot one other. It just came to me. We forgot the ever famous rattle can.
The rattle can.
The absolute least expensive way to spray paint.
The least expensive. So, I will tell you that instead of setting up a spray booth or anything, that if I'm going to do small pieces of furniture, I just go down and buy myself a rattle can of poly, clear poly,
yep.
and spray it.
Yep.
Okay. works like a dream.
So
now,
so that's
if you're
the
gonna
small
do
job
if you're
answer,
going to do
right?
big, if you're going to do doors and things like that, cabinet doors and things like that, no, that's not, you're not going to get an even coverage on it. But for small things, small chair, whatever, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we forgot that, John. I mean, and two, one of the other things about some of the rattle cans, there really is some very, very, and when we say rattle cans, folks, the reason we call it a rattle can is it has the bead inside, and when you shake it, it rattles, right? Yeah. And so we should have mentioned that first, John. But anyway, there's some really cool products out there for various different things. And if you look at some of the manufacturers, just have some really things. They have hammered finishes. They have a chalkboard finish. They have some other finishes that you generally can't get elsewhere. And so it's kind of an interesting little diatribe. But if you're going to do small projects, definitely use the small rattle cans, as I like to call it. I used one yesterday, actually, John. I was just doing a little touch up on some wood, and it was just kind of like, I don't need. It was a long story, but I just used a little bit of it, and I happen to have some. I always carry white and black and a few other, some basic colors. Appliance. Actually, I was touching up on an appliance, so I used appliance epoxy paint, which in a rattle can, and I needed about 6. I went, and that was it.
And I just hope that throughout this segment here, this show, is that when people come down to and they're walking down the aisle in the big box store and they see all the different sprayers and things, now you have a better understanding about where they fit and what their job is.
Yeah, and the amount of time they'll save you. And then also,
yes.
And back to aggravation, right? Because as you said, and we've said it a million times, our job is to save time, money, and aggravation. Well, aggravation is our big one. And when you're spraying a shutter or you're doing those deck railings, you can paint your deck railings, folks. You can. It takes forever, and you got to get up in under the corners. You got to get up in the back, up under the railing. When you take that sprayer, you go,
yep,
and it's done. And you haven't missed anything. You don't have little places where you're frustrated and things like that. All right, John. Anything else on paint spraying? Spraying paint?
I think for this segment, we covered the basics of it.
Well, awesome. So, folks, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please send us an email at questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. Go to our website, leave us a message. We can actually take a voice message now. Go up on the right-hand corner. It says leave us a voice message. Just press on that. It'll take you over to a link where you can leave us a message. Or you can join our Facebook group at Handyman Pros on Facebook. Is always good. And then, you can do how else? John, we take smoke signals. What else do we do? Is there any other way we get in control? I was going to give John's phone number out, but I decided it probably wasn't a good idea. So,
Yeah, I'd be changing.
You'd be changing. Well, I was afraid. I was afraid if I gave out your phone number, what would happen is that the people from outer space would intercept it, and they would be coming down and calling you before they landed. Yes. Right. Before they landed.
They want all their parts back. I got a whole shed full of their parts now.
Because the spaceship has landed, and what do we do when we see the spaceship landing?
Got all their parts. The little green men are after me. I'm running.
That's right. We don't look at it. We take it apart. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this podcast and have derived some value from it, here's 4 things you can do. 1, tell your friends about this podcast. 2, hit subscribe on your podcast player. While you're there, leave us a review. 3, subscribe to our newsletter by going to handymanprosradioshow.com and click on the subscribe button. We'll inform you of upcoming events, shows, and give you actionable tips for maintaining your home and property. And 4, send us an email with your questions to questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. That's handymanprosradioshow.com. That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.